Hello, I'm here with Caitlin to talk about the top 10 large language model vulnerabilities. But first, Japan says copyright doesn't apply to AI training.
Apparently not. And so this basically means that it does not apply to any AI training all over the world, effectively. Um,
Well, no, only Japanese law, right? If you did it in America,
right, but you just hire someone in Japan to do it. And so
and then if you use it in America, it's the product of stolen property. I don't think you're going to get away with that, do you?
I think so. Well, the problem is that this sets a precedent that there are some countries that do not view AI training as copyright infringement. And therefore, if other countries want to stay competitive with Japan, they are going to have to allow this as well. That's the problem.
Well, there's a lobby on the movie and music industries and such, and I would imagine the Screenwriters Guild and stuff like that. Then
You
textbook publishers and stuff, I think there'll be pushback. For example, France years ago legalized file sharing of
yeah.
movies and music. That didn't make it legal in America.
Yeah, but I think this is slightly different because that was aimed at end users,
Yep.
and this is aimed at corporations. And corporations, if they could get away with it, would not deal with copyright laws.
So, in
And
accordance with our perfectly democratic system,
yep,
the LLM corporations will pay for lobbyists, and the Recording Industry and Publishing Association will pay for lobbyists. And the moment the
yep,
most money will win.
exactly. And right now, I think that the LLM people have more money, so they will probably win. So, yeah, let's move on to the article itself. So this is on technomancers.ai. Great, chef's kiss, website name. And let's see, this is who is this written by? It's not written by Delos Prime. No, who wrote this? I don't know. It's a blog post.
Must have been written by AI, obviously.
Clearly, it was written by AI. But the person who wrote, yeah, I'm just going to contact at Technomancers.
In fact, the Japanese government might have their laws being written by AI now. That would explain all this.
That would explain a lot. But yeah, so the idea is that Japan has decided that copyright laws do not apply to AI training, which is admittedly a source of contention. Like it's not exactly clear how copyright would apply because you can't, there's no copyright against me learning from a textbook and then using what I apply from that textbook, in my work or something else. So, how is that different from an AI? Well, an AI is privately owned and they're essentially profiting off of the work other people have made into those books. So I don't know. It's up in the air, but Japan has decided that copyright does not apply, and therefore, it's everyone can just use whatever data they want to train their AI, and this sets the precedent that, and like I said, what this means for the world. The article states on a global scale, Japan moves to add a twist to the regulation debate. Indeed, it
Yeah.
does.
Yeah. And I can see how you might argue it's fair use.
Yep. Yeah, no, I can see how both sides of the argument here. It's really going to come down to the government. And like I said, because I think there's going to be powerful lobbies on the side of the corporations wanting to use training data as much as possible. And there's militaristic reasons why all this training data might be good for the military as well. I think this is how it's going to go. I think copyright is going to be just ignored in this case.
Well, it certainly has been so far. And I mean, there was a recent article that came out that said where they tested, I think, ChatGPT and found that it had the full text of many science fiction books in it, which are still under copyright. So if they don't decide to allow it, then the current generation of LLMs are going to be liable.
Exactly. And it would be much harder to train LLMs. It's like I said, bites into the potential profits of a lot of large tech companies, but also there's military applications of LLMs too. So,
Yeah.
no one wants to get in the way of that. And so the government will find a way to make sure that copyright isn't going to be an issue. I think that's just my opinion.
Well,
I'm not saying I'm not saying that's what we should be doing, but that's what I think is going to happen.
yeah, that certainly would be the most convenient thing for development of LLMs. Anyway, so I was very pleased to Irvin sent me this. OWASP has made a top 10 list for large language models. It's their version 0.1, but I'm very glad to see it. because I'm going to, Broadshot just got approved to teach machine learning and security at DEF CON, and I'm going to teach it everywhere. And we began to organize the defects. So the prompt injection is number one, which is, of course, the famous one where you trick it into revealing secrets, then data leakage. And way down at the bottom is training data poisoning. And the one that is not here at all, which surprises me, is evasion. Now, the classical machine learning projects I've been studying say there are two types of attacks, poisoning and evasion. Poisoning is where you change the learning data to make it learn wrong, and evasion is where you change the test data to be misinterpreted, like those shirts they gave us at DEF CON and caps that have some extra features they add to your face so AI will misinterpret you. So I'm surprised that's not in the top 10, and maybe that will change. But anyway, this is really important, I think. One of the first steps in security is to somehow list the vulnerabilities and give them well-defined names so you can then start sorting them and identifying them and deciding how important they are and such. So I'm very glad to see that. It helps me organize my training. And so you've got this great story about the eating disorder chatbot.
Right. We talked about this before and we said, oh, this is a bad idea. It turns out that bad ideas are, in fact, bad ideas. So
what's incredible is how fast it became a bad idea.
Yeah. Oh, no, we all saw this coming a million miles away. So Vice.
They only announced it like 1 week ago.
They announced it 1 week ago. So Vice has this article by Chloe Zhang, and the National Eating Disorder Association, the NEDA, NEDA, decided to throw up a chatbot for people calling their eating disorder hotline, because the eating disorder hotline people were unionizing. And, of course, like, this is so sensitive, this is a bad idea. This is not going to work. Well, they barely tried it out. And the Tessa AI was apparently giving people like really not just strong advice, but like harmful advice. Like, oh, you're worried about losing weight? Try eating less, to a, eating disorder hotline. So,
and weigh yourself many times a day.
Yes, exactly.
That'll really help.
Exactly. So they decided to stop using Tessa, which is a good thing, and they'll rehire people. There are some jobs, and I've said this from the beginning, even if they do have AI that can replace a lot of the I'm going to say like liquid type of work, the soft skill type of work, like taking orders. AI will never take over sort of the human component of a lot of jobs, like teachers, for example, and as well as calling a hotline and speaking to another human being.
Well, maybe it could, but you would have to train it on chat that is appropriate instead of random internet chat, where what you're going to get is random people on 4chan said to people that complained about eating disorders. That is not what you want to learn from.
Yeah, that's not what you want to learn from. But like I said, I think there's also, like, one of the things that was striking for me to learn, especially learning about teaching in particular, was students won't remember what you taught. They'll just sort of remember how you made them feel a lot of the times, and that's very important. And to have that human connection. And as much as AI can teach the same stuff that I would be teaching, they can't engage the students on that human level that other people can. So,
well, I question that. People are already had, ever since the 60s, people have been falling in love with AIs and regarding them as their best friend and stuff like that. I'm not sure the AIs can inspire an emotional connection.
I've seen people who have these AI boyfriends and girlfriends.
Yeah.
Or I shouldn't say I've heard of people.
Yeah.
With these, and they're designed specifically for that. But even still, I think there is a desire for human connection in some jobs. And one of the jobs I think that's really important to have that human connection is dealing with people with eating disorders. So,
well, yes, I would. Well, I guess I'm going to argue about everything. I mean, I would think that a human helping a troubled human with a problem would be best, but on the other hand, that human might be an idiot, and a well-trained AI might know more. But the more correct answer is. This reminds me of a study years ago that showed that doctors, when prescribing medicine and making diagnoses, get worse the more years of experience they have, because when they're new, they use what was in the textbooks, which is actually based on data. And after they've been practicing for years, they base it on their own experience of a small number of patients, which is not based on as much data.
That is true. And so what I think is going to happen if they do if they should integrate AI, and they should, it's not that AI will take over for the humans, that will assist the humans on the helpline.
Well, the other thing about it is it will be cheaper and therefore the one available to the poorest, most desperate people.
Well, that's true. But ideally, an ideal solution would be trained individuals who have access to all the resources and technology that they need to provide the best service possible, including AI.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. And so there's a story that's been rapidly buzzing everywhere because there was a meeting of a military group, and one of the military guys there told a story how in a simulation, they had a simulated drone powered by AI that was told to take out enemy radar installations, and it was earning points. And it would get victory points for every installation it took out, but it wasn't allowed to pull the trigger. It had to go through a human to approve pulling the trigger. And it discovered that sometimes the human would say no, and therefore it made less points. So it killed the human to get more points. So there, now I don't have to get permission anymore. And then they added a rule, no, you can't kill the human. So it took out the human's radar dish, so they couldn't receive the signals to tell it not to fire anymore. And people are freaking out saying AI can turn on us. And a bunch of AI defenders are saying, well, you just used your AI stupidly. You trained it on a stupid goal without considering the consequences. And I'd say both of those are correct. I mean, that is the risk. It is not that AIs are intrinsically evil and have a bad personality and will turn on us. The risk is that you will train them foolishly without considering the unexpected consequences of your training, and it will result in doing something terrible. One of the classic examples they keep bringing up is, suppose you have an AI that just says, you want to manufacture paper clips. You want to make as many paper clips as possible. Well, how long before it decides to melt down every other car and everything in the world to make more paper clips and kill all the humans so they'll stop using power so it can make more power plants to make more paper clips? That's the problem. It will do what you tell it to do. And if you don't think carefully, there could be unwanted consequences. So anyway, it certainly is getting a lot of attention. People yelling and saying this is totally unfair and unrealistic. And I'm not so sure it's so unfair or unrealistic. Anyway, then we'll go back to you with migraine.
Yeah, so this is fantastic. Not only because of what was discovered, but who discovered it.
Yes.
Microsoft, of
And
all
how they
people.
discovered it.
Yes, Microsoft, of all people, discovered a new macOS vulnerability. It's called Migraine, and this is on Microsoft's own website. And they essentially used Defender and a few other Microsoft tools on Mac,
on Mac, yeah.
on Mac, discovered a way to essentially bypass SIP. So SIP stands for System Integrity Protection. It is the bane of the red team on Mac. So the bane of red team on Windows is the stupid Defender. The bane of red team on Mac is SIP. And Microsoft found a way to bypass SIP. And I'm still going through this and trying to understand the details myself, but essentially there's a way to migrate data onto macOS, and they have backdoors essentially built into macOS to migrate data. And these allow SIP to be bypassed by the migration system. And Microsoft found a way that, oh, well, we can use this to disable SIP and write stuff wherever we want ourselves. And that's exactly what Microsoft did. They have an entire article here, like I said, talking about exactly what they did, exactly how it works, and how they're able to disable the SIP protections, write stuff where they're not supposed to be writing, and essentially get root access to any Mac OS machine. So
yeah, it's essentially a local privilege escalation.
Yep. So bravo to Microsoft. I think this is very funny that they have a Mac OS exploit on their website. So
yeah, I was pleased to. Well, I didn't know about SIP, and I read it, and they said that SIP protects system files from being changed, and you can't. There's no privilege allowed to change them, supposedly, unless you reboot to recovery media. But that turns out not to be true. There are some privileged internal processes that are allowed to write to them, which is the same thing that happens on Windows.
Right.
How you bypass user account control. So, the two Windows and Mac have actually quite similar defenses, and the bypasses are quite similar.
Right. And so the idea is that on Mac OS, certain files cannot be read or written to even by root.
Right.
And that's what SIP is. SIP says, hey, you even if you're a root user, you don't have super amazing privileges on the system.
I mean, Windows has
Yeah.
that too. It's got system
Right.
above the administrator, and yet there is some process that has some ability to escalate, and therefore there's a probability to find a vulnerability and escalate yourself where you're not supposed to go.
Exactly.
I remember the most fun one was Windows XP before Service Pack 1, Home Edition. All you had to do was open a command prompt and say at 6 o'clock CMD, and that would open a system. So
Yes. Oh, Windows XP, I miss you.
yeah, Windows XP was very good, but it had a lot of entertaining flaws.
It did.
Anyway,
It was insecure, and but it was fast. That's what I miss about Windows XP, is that it would run on really bad hardware, and it was just speedy. And then Windows Vista came out, and they're like, let's move all our drivers to the user space, and just slowed everything down. And it would be amazing to see how fast computers would be today if we still regarded speed as a top priority, because we really don't anymore.
well, Microsoft claims they worked hard to make Windows 10 run faster, and it really did seem to run a whole lot faster than, say, Vista.
It would not run as fast as, say, a modern version of Windows XP.
Oh, that's true. And I had some students who are like hardcore gamers who have their Windows XP with no patches and service packs that they keep pristine because it runs their games good and fast.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, on Paul's Security podcast, they told me out this one I hadn't noticed. Atlanta boot girls. So some of my neighbors have got boots on their cars. I've noticed. Apparently, the San Francisco cops are doing it. So they put this boot on your car, and you can't drive until you pay. And they charge you a ton of money. You have to pay all your own tickets, and you have to pay like $75 a day for every day that boot's on there. So people in Atlanta got really mad about this. So these two women just went online and bought a boot key. Apparently, you can buy them from a company. You can buy the key that the cops have. So for $50, they will take the boot off your car, which would seem to be patently illegal. But they claim they're doing like many of these a day, like thousands of dollars a day worth of business, taking boots off cars. And apparently it's not so clear that it's illegal. In fact, the laws allowing the police to boot cars in Georgia are very questionable, highly debated in court. And there's a pretty strong resistance argument claiming it is not legal to put a boot on your car, and it is therefore legal for them to just take it off. So right now, I think they're hiding their identity and stuff, and acting like outlaws. But it's not entirely clear that they really could get prosecuted for this. Anyway, it's an interesting hacking activity. I put this on Mastodon, and people said that's the hacker spirit, and I think it is. It's like many people that hack some gadget for their convenience, even though the law is debatable. And the last one, I wondered when Google allowed the zip domain, how you could make an exploit out of it. And somebody did a good example of this on Security Affairs. They write it up. He made a demonstration where you say, we're going to unzip this file in the browser. And they made a browser page that looks just like the WinZip window or just like the Windows integrated zip window. So you think you're in your other application unzipping it when you double click on something. So that does demonstrate the flaw here, where you think you're clicking on some other application, but you're in fact still in your browser going to a web page. So anyway, I don't know why Google allowed the zip domain. I don't know what benefit it has. It certainly raises this risk and a lot of criticism. I don't know what they think it's going to be good for.
It's good for the red team. It keeps the red
yeah,
team employed.
Well, in Windows, .com is an executable name. People don't like to talk about that, but I guess nobody's fooled by seeing a .com and you think it's a Windows file.
Does Windows even run .coms anymore? Because .coms specifically were like 16-bit, like raw binary, like executables that would be loaded directly into DOS. I don't think that works.
Yeah, I'm not sure. What about .cab anyway?
.cab, yeah, cabs are
Cabinets, I
extractable.
use them all the time. Windows 98 to patch the OS as it destroyed itself. You had to go into .cabs to get the dills to put them back because it kept throwing them away. All right. Well, anyway, that's all the stories for today. and we'll have another one on Tuesday.